and welcome, everybody. This is Weird Mythic Podcast. I'm Naomi, and I am here with Jason today. If everyone remembers, hey, Jason. We had him on our Krampus episode, and he's also the creator of Santa May Be a Criminal, which nobody has been listening. Go ahead and just put me on pause and listen to Jason's Santa Maybe because it's freaking great and hilarious. Jason, say hey.
Hi. Thanks for having me back. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for the plug on the podcast. It's been a lot of fun. The first season's done, and we're moving on to some spinoffs in the next season. So I'm stoked to be back, and I'm excited to share a new creature tonight.
All right, cool. Yeah, thanks for even joining us. So, everybody, Serena's not with us at the moment. She is at home taking care of the kid and herself. They got sick and they got strep throat, so she's not even able to talk. She was going to try to make it, but she just couldn't do it at the moment, so we will miss her. But
feel better.
Yes, please get better soon. she's the producer. I got to learn how to do all this real quick, so but always fun. So today we will be talking about river and lake monsters, and I got a lot of monsters to talk about. What about you, Jason?
I've got one because if anyone listened to the last episode, they know I'm not very prolific in my researching skills, but I've got one that's actually very close to where I am right now, to where I live. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Awesome. I do want to mention to everybody that not only are Serena and I going to be at the True Crime podcast festival in Dallas at the end of August, but Jason's going to be there too. He does the true crime thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. It should be fun. I'm going to be, I'll be exhibiting like the both of you will, and I'll be dressed in Christmassy type garb. I will not be easy to miss. You'll be able to spot me from a mile away.
Oh, that's great. And what other things do you have going on for Santa Maybe?
Yeah, so I'm going to be dropping an Easter Bunny spinoff here soon. For those who haven't listened yet, the Easter Bunny does make an appearance in season 1. The Tooth Fairy, there are some sinister things in her storyline that we're exploring, and I'm excited to do sort of a crossover episode with another podcast, Stories from the In-Between, that'll be coming out. I don't know. I don't have quite a timeline on that yet, but it will be sometime in the next couple of months. The elves at the North Pole with Santa gone, they have some issues with their work, and somebody has to step in and fill the void. So I've got a spinoff with that, and then the plan is season 2 of Santa May Be a Criminal will drop on Halloween and go through this coming holiday season, and I'm excited to do that. And while I'm at these different festivals, I'll be at CrimeCon next week, and then True Crime Podcast Festival, and then the Savannah Crime Expo. There will be an opportunity for me to talk to people about whether they think Santa is in fact guilty or innocent. We left that on a cliffhanger at the end of season 1, so hopefully people have opinions and they share them with us.
I definitely have my opinions. I definitely think that, well, I'm just going to go ahead. I think Sam is innocent. That's where I'm coming from after this first season. So I have a question about your about the Nopo, actually.
Yes.
So your main character, Richie Buck, he went to the Nopo. He's there for a few days, and he got the key to the city, right?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned 2 other people who got the key to the city. One was Will Ferrell, understandable completely, but the other was Andre Agassi. I need more information on how and why Andre Agassi got the key to the city.
The elves loved Andre Agassi's tennis skills back in the I guess it was the 90s. Yeah. It was. Yeah. I don't understand how that came to be. There is another individual who was close, who comes up in the Easter Bunny story soon, who was very close to getting the key to the city, but which is that character ties into another historic crime in American history.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, well, you'll get to hear about all of that here very soon. I'm very excited about the person that's going to play that character. He's a very good friend of mine, a wonderful actor, writer, director, a guy named Matt Croyle, who will be playing the role, that iconic role that I will not name just yet. So there's your tease,
right.
but I'm stoked about it. It's great.
Cool.
But yeah, Will Ferrell, Andre Agassi, and Richie Buck. Those are the three.
That is just so great. As soon as you started saying that, and Andre Agassi, and I was like, the tennis guy with the beautiful
Exactly.
hair back in the day.
I know he had beautiful hair, and then he had a beautiful bald head.
Yeah.
So he could play both sides. It was very cool.
Yeah. No, I really enjoy Santa Maybe. I was totally had some questions. I'm gonna actually re-listen to the first season so that I have more questions at the True Crime Festival. So yeah,
that's
I'll
awesome.
be coming
I
for
can't
more.
wait.
But I had to ask about Andre Agassi. My mom was a huge fan, and I remember watching him as a kid in the 90s, like always on TV. So
absolutely. No, I look forward to your other questions too. It's a lot of fun. It's a great time with that show. So thank you.
Hell yeah. Okay, well, let's go ahead and talk about some monsters again. We are going to be talking about rivers and lake monsters. Do you want to go ahead and go first, ma'am?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, so I've got a couple things I kind of want to start off with before I tell who my monster is. I mean, so I live here on the coast, on the Georgia coast, and I cannot tell you like how terrifying it is to be out. Like, so the Atlantic, there's a lot of ship traffic that comes through here. So the water is very murky. And I can't tell you how terrifying it is to be in the water and feel something, brush against your leg or your foot or whatever. I mean, it's really scary. I've seen dogs leap out of the water because they're so scared of whatever, touches them underneath that they can't see. I remember this one time I was kayaking with some friends, and this is probably the scariest time of my life. Or one of the scariest times of my life. And I capsized, and I was like, I could see the dock from the distance, and I was trying to swim back to it, but I was also the kayak was a barred kayak, so I didn't want to lose it, so I'm trying to swim with one arm, and the tide's going out, and I'm in this murky intracoastal waters for, a few minutes, while my friends got out and came and got me, and I was scared to death because of these these mythic stories, these weird mythic stories that I've heard growing up. When I was and this is the last anecdote I'll tell you from a personal standpoint before I get into my monster, but when I was a very small kid, my pawpaw, my mom's dad, we would go fishing on the Flint River, which is not the same river I'm going to talk about tonight, but we would fish on this other river. And he would tell me about these catfish that were the size of men, these man-sized catfish. And I do know that they get very big. But, as a little kid, hearing that, it was just like, absolutely terrifying and totally freaked me out. But my story tonight comes from the Altamaha River, which is here in Georgia. It's the largest free-flowing river here on the East Coast. It's 137 miles long. It runs from central Georgia down, like sort of past where I live, into southeastern Georgia, which that part of the state is called the Golden Isles. And the creature that I'm talking about, my lake monster, my river monster, is named after it. It's called the Altamaha.
Altamaha.
Yeah, which is good because I have a comedy podcast, so it kind of plays into the, there's a ha-ha here for me. I'll talk about a little bit about this. I've gotten most of my facts and things from a couple websites, exploresouthernhistory.com and legendsofamerica.com.
I like that. But Legends of America, I've used them before. Yeah, they're awesome.
Very, very good stuff here. Yeah. So a few interesting things about the habitat in the river. It was declared the 7th most endangered river in the U.S. in 2002 because of and I bring this up because there are a lot of power plants on the river and reservoirs and, power plants, like Mothman, things like that. You see things kind of around those UFOs, and you see things around those sort of structures. There are, there's a real push to protect, the acres around the river. And it supports the largest concentration of rare species of any river in Georgia. So, I mean, this is not a little creek. It's the real deal.
Right.
So getting to the creature, its nickname, the Altamahaha's nickname is Altie.
Altie.
Or Altie, Altie or Altie, Altie, which, kind of, if you were to draw a cartoon, I think it'd have like a little bowler cap and a bow tie and a monocle and, like some mutton chop sideburns. But anyhow, this guy's a rock star down in this area. You can find lots of, crafts and trinkets and things like that from sort of the touristy areas down here that are trying to capitalize on his presence. But this is not a new phenomenon. It actually... the accounts actually go back to pre-British colonialization, to the Tama Native American tribe, which was an offshoot of the Creek tribe, Native American tribes. And these accounts, they show up as early. They also show up in like media, like newspaper and things like that, in accounts as early as the 1800s. And so the other kind of interesting note, I think, is that this area that we're talking about, specifically around an area called Darien, Georgia, was settled by like Scottish Highlanders from the Loch Ness area of Scotland.
Okay.
So there's sort of a tie back to Nessie here, which I think is very interesting and probably the most, famous, lake monster. And initially Darien was named New Inverness, but they ended up changing it to Darien as they settled there. So Altie, he or she looks like sort of like a sturgeon, so it has like a sturgeon-like body, including like the bony ridge on the dorsal backside. It's said to have front flippers with no back limbs or fins. Swims sort of like a dolphin. Has the snout of a crocodile filled with large sharp teeth. It's also said to have large protruding eyes, and I've seen the color to be gray or green or like gunmetal gray, probably depending on the light. And that's sort of kind of would sort of fit with that water that we're talking about down there. Has sort of a whitish yellow underbelly. And most of the reports I looked at said it's between 20 to 30 feet long. Though I'm going to talk about one here in just a minute that places it as quite a bit larger, but most of them kind of fall, plus or minus a few feet off of that. But like I said, the first reports mentioned this go back to the 1800s. And one of these is from the Savannah, Georgia, called the Savannah Georgian newspaper, which reported multiple sightings. And this specific one was like 192 years ago this week, which is interesting.
Okay.
It's April 18th. So we're recording on the 20th. So this quote is attributed to Captain Delano of the schooner Eagle, who saw this creature off of St. Simon's Island. And so the dispatch read, the animal he saw was about 70 feet long, so quite a bit larger than what I just said,
much
20
larger.
30 feet. Yeah. And its circumference about that of a sugar hogshead.
Okay.
Moving with its head shaped like an alligator's about 8 feet out of the water. So now a hogshead in this reference is like a large barrel or cask, I guess, for whiskey
Oh, okay.
or bourbon or something, or I guess something like that. So other eyewitnesses proclaimed that the creature was seen in St. Simon's Sound to be a whale, but none could say for sure what it was. But Captain Delano was like, I know what a whale looks like. It's not a whale.
Well, he's a captain of a boat. Of course he knows what a whale looks like.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, come on, back off. So yeah, and he had never seen this creature before or since, in the times of these accounts. So that was kind of interesting from him. And we'll move a little closer now to present day, which is the 1970s. A guy by the name of Harvey Blackman of Brunswick. Again, Brunswick is very near Darien. He said he saw the creature in the 1970s. He said it had a snake-like head and was 15 to 20 feet long. And he saw it at a place called Two-Way on the Altamaha River. Another eyewitness around that time named Frank Culpepper saw the creature's wake sort of in the same area, and said it left a billow of water behind, so big that it caused the boats to bump about.
Okay.
And one of the people in that sighting ran to get a rifle, but couldn't get a shot off before the creature was underwater and gone away. But Alti really got publicity in 1981 because there had been some recent reports of Nessie, its cousin from Scotland. And that's when a former newspaper publisher named Larry Gwynn reported seeing him while fishing with his friend Stephen Wilson. And they said it had two big humps about 5 feet apart and left behind the wake like that of a speedboat. So it seemed like the creature was big, was quick, was able to move through the area, pretty quickly and easily. And so that's when newspapers started kind of running national stories. And I'll just bring up a couple of other quick kind of scattered reports, not necessarily chronologically. This is one from the 1920s. There were some timbermen riding the river who reported seeing a large snake-like water monster. In 1935, a group of hunters spotted what they called a giant snake swimming through the river. In the 40s, Boy Scouts reported seeing the creature. The Boy Scouts always tell the truth, like Abraham Lincoln. And also two officials from the Reedsville State Prison also reported seeing something similar in the 1950s. In 1969, there were two brothers that were fishing and said they saw an animal that they first thought was a sturgeon, but when they got a better look, they changed their mind on that. They said it measured about 10 to 12 feet long, snout like an alligator, like we've sort of mentioned, horizontal tail. They said it also had a triangular ridge along the top of its body with sharp pointed teeth, and this was one of the gunmetal gray colored animals. In one account, in the summer of 1980, two men reportedly saw him or her stranded on a mud bank near Cathead Creek. They said the animal was lying halfway in the water, thrashing and trying to free itself from the bank, and described it being dark colored with rough skin and about 20 feet long. And while they were watching it, freed itself and got back in the water and disappeared. And then later that year, another man in December reported seeing what he thought was the Altamaha in Smith Lake. He said that that account was that the animal was 15 to 20 feet long, snake-like with two brown humps, a couple things we've heard before, that protruded from the water and left behind the wake like a speedboat. So, and then in one other report in the 80s, some crab fishermen described it as what appeared to be the world's largest eel. I will say I'll send you this link if you want to include. Yeah. There is an amateur video of something in the water. which was taken in 2010. An amateur photographer captured a video of something strange swimming in the channel off of Fort King George, which is a historic site in Darien. And that's at what was the Georgia site that I mentioned a minute ago. So yeah, there are these different independent accounts of things that have very similar descriptions, and again, St. Simon's is actually our favorite beach to visit. And so if I'm in the water down there and I feel something rubbing up next to me, I'm gonna pat its head and call him Altie. So yeah, that's my local monster there.
I like it. No, I've never heard of Alti before, so thank you. That was awesome. Yeah. So the water at that river and lake, like, can you see it? Like, is it like brown murky water like throughout it?
Yeah, it's very murky. So, for where we are, so for instance, for Savannah, and up this side of the coast here, and St. Simon's is pretty much due south of us. So, in Darien, so that's about, 45 or 50 miles, 60 miles maybe south of Savannah. Savannah is like the third, I think it's the third largest port in the country.
Okay.
So we have a lot of big ship traffic.
Lots of traffic, yeah.
And so it just churns and churns and churns. So the water is very, very super murky. Like at Tybee Island, which is where that's probably the closest beach for us. It's not our favorite because we do love St. Simon's. But Tybee Island, like you can walk out and a few feet of water and you can't see anything.
Okay.
In there. And we like St. Simon's a little better because the grade of the shoreline in the water is much less steep. So it's Tybee, you can walk out and then fall 2 feet all of a sudden.
There's not just a drop off randomly. Yeah.
Yeah, St. Simon's is very gradual. So it's creepy to be out in that water because you can't see what's underneath.
No,
what's in there,
Yeah.
So.
The most that I could relate to that. So, I'm in Sacramento. We got the Sacramento River going right through the North State right here. And it's also very murky and muddy. And we had the rope swing when I was a kid. I didn't grow up in Sac. I grew up an hour north, and it's pretty rural up there. We had the rope swing, and we would always jump right into the water off of the bank. It was so much fun. But you can't see anything. Like, you step right into that water and it is mud, just mud all over.
Oh my gosh.
And there's huge sturgeon that are in the Sac River. There's huge catfish in the Sacramento River. Yeah. I've heard stories of these catfish that are like 8 feet long and they're just cruising in there. And I'm like, I used to swim in that, man. Like, not anymore.
Crazy. That's insane. Wow.
They are huge. My dad knows people who so they got all the drainage ditches, and so there's all those really big tubes and waterways. So sometimes they'll have like people from Fish and Game or people from the county. They'll have to go in and actually clear out some of those tubes and waterways. But
sure.
What they do is they take this big stick and they kind of shove it through those tubes, and they'll be on top of it. So they're like shoving it underneath them into the tubes, right? And they will see catfish, zoom right out. Like, and they're saying they're freaking huge. I'm like, oh, that's so scary. So
that's wild.
It would never, ever surprise me if in Georgia, what you're talking about, where Alti is, it wouldn't surprise me if there's something huge just living in there. Why not?
Sure.
If it's big enough and there's no clear way to actually see to the bottom.
Right.
Why not?
It's kind of like that thing where they say goldfish will kind of grow to like the size of their tank. Mm-hmm. Like, if there's no like boundary keeping you from stopping growing, as long as you can live and eat and, kind of feed yourself. Mm-hmm. It's certainly very, I think there are a lot of things in the water we don't know about. And, it wouldn't surprise me if there was something like this out there.
Why not? I do remember this one time. I wasn't in the river. I was actually at the ocean here in Fort Bragg, and my dad likes to snorkel and he goes diving. So when I was old enough, I was actually able to go with him, and me and my brother were snorkeling at, I think it was at Russian Gulch, one of their beaches, and it's real nice. You could just walk right into the water. But on the specific day that I went, decided to be windy as hell. So in the water, like, all of the sand and dirt is getting whipped up. And again, I'm
Yep.
snorkeling. I got the little thing on my mouth that's poking out the top.
Sure.
I can't see more than like, a few inches in front of my face, and I'm like 14 and I'm a little scared, but I'm doing it. But I would have like the seaweed like brush against me and I wouldn't see it, and I would legit scream underwater in my snorkel, and it
Oh
scared the hell
yeah.
out of me. And then I was like, oh, it's just seaweed, and I keep little snorkeling, but it's so
Yeah.
scary if you don't see it, you're not expecting it, and then something like just kind of grazes over you, and you're like, what the hell?
Exactly.
It is so creepy.
Jaws ruined everything for anybody that went into the water. I tell you, because yeah, that's all you think about. It's just like, oh my gosh, it's a
It's a
shark, or
shark.
oh, something's gonna eat me, or yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, yeah,
for
absolutely.
real, man. So I have a few monsters. I'm not, of course,
Awesome.
gonna go into like all kinds of detail, but I'm gonna give as much detail as I can, because when we talk about like river monsters, lake monsters, even in the ocean, giant somethings that are out there that have never been scientifically proven or
Sure.
like really documented to say this is what this is. There's so many different stories out there from all over the world. So I'm actually going to start off by talking about one in West Africa, and it is called the Ninki Nanka. And specifically, it likes to be in Gambia in the swamps. So,
Okay.
yeah, very, very, very interesting. The only thing about the Ninkiyamba, or no, sorry, Ninkiyamba. Oh my gosh, I just got today's episode confused with the Inkiyamba from our other cryptid episode. Both in Africa. Sorry about that. The Ninki Nanka, again in West Africa, in Gambia. There has been sightings of this river monster since, I don't know, so long ago. It's been documented in their local traditions and local folklore. But what's really interesting about it is not only is this thing about 30 feet long, if not bigger, but it has a long neck like a giraffe. It also
Okay.
has horns and either a horse head or a crocodile head, but has horns.
Oh, nice.
So, and I didn't see anything about it having flippers or anything like that, like some of the other ones
Right.
that I've seen. But what I thought was really cool about this one is it has scales. I didn't come
Oh,
across a whole lot of river monsters with scales. And the
right.
specific thing about the Ninki Nanka is these scales are kind of like mirrors. So it's really shimmery. And that's the thing that catches people's eye, is that they'll see it in the water, then they're realizing this is a 30-foot long something in the water. So
Right.
that's kind of the first thing they see are these, glittery scales. Um, some of
So,
this,
so
yeah.
real quick question for you. So that's a really interesting thing that I had not thought about. So okay, so scales equal fish,
Mm-hmm.
and so since these other accounts, like Alti, for instance, that none of these accounts say scales.
Mm-hmm.
So would you think that Alti and like Nessie and those ones that, and maybe you have more that are gonna
Mm-hmm.
mirror this as well? Do you think they're mammals?
Hmm.
Like manatee, like like a manatee or like a
Yeah.
seal, or but just stretched out, stretched
No,
out.
yeah. Well, that's one of the things is they're like, it has to be like a crocodile because it has scales,
Right, right.
but there's no crocodiles really in this area. Like there are, but not as many as you think.
Sure,
I don't know if it would be a mammal like,
a mammal or
yeah.
reptile
But what I
or
always go back to is I'm like, so a lot of the river and lake monsters that I was doing research on had more of like a catfish type of look to it. How it was real
okay.
smooth instead of like the Ninkinanka that has scales. So
Gotcha.
That was
Okay.
that was the only thing I could think of. I'm like, I'm not quite sure actually, but great question. Call me
Okay.
out. So, another thing about it, I'm trying not to lose track of my paperwork here, but so there's a lot of like stories that go back to how people would be telling their kids not to go to the swamps and play a whole lot because it's going to come out and get you. So one of the stories I came across was, I wish I had a date for it, but I couldn't find a specific date, but I did find two different YouTube channels that described pretty much the same story, that there was this group of children and they went over to the swamp in the water and they were playing whatever, having a fun time, doing what kids do, when they saw the Ninki Nanka rise up out of the water, and they said it had just a very long neck and a giant head, and it came at them. So they take off running, but this thing is really fast and actually got one of the kids. And
Oh my gosh.
sadly, it sounded like it started eating the kid. So
Oh my
the rest of
gosh.
the group of kids took off running to the village, and they're telling everybody like what happened, like we were just playing, we weren't paying attention, but so and so is still out there. So a group of men from the village went to the swamp where the kids were, and they not only did they not find the kid who was left behind, sadly, the only thing they found was like there was some disturbance on like the shore in the muddy
Yeah.
area, and there was blood in the area as well.
Oh man.
Yeah, like that one's pretty freaking creepy, so I had to
And I
mention
almost
it.
said that. I almost said Ninky Nanka sounded like a really cute name, and now I'm like, I thought this was more like Altie, like just hanging out in a bowler cap and a bow tie. But this is a
No,
vicious creature.
this one has been known to drag people underwater. So,
Oh gosh.
it's actually there was so in 2006, the Center for 14 Zoology, I'm not quite sure what that entity is, but they went to Gambia and they wanted to really investigate what everybody was saying was out there, that's been out there for hundreds of years. And they started talking to locals in the area, and a lot of people started saying that it kind of looked like what a Chinese dragon would look like. Like you think of
Oh,
Chinese dragons, and they got the long serpent type bodies with the little feet at the
sure.
ends and really big head, and they sometimes have a crest on their head. That's what
Yeah.
they were really reporting. And it had a whole lot of media coverage, that it has an official name for this group going out to Gambia. It's called the J.T. Downs Memorial Gambia Expedition of 2006. So I wasn't able to do a whole lot of research on that, but I'm going to, because I need to know
Yes.
a little bit more about what they found or what they didn't find.
Do you like the show The Office?
I do.
Have you ever watched this? Okay, so it kind of like reminds me of like the Michael Scott Fun Run for rabies research, whatever
Exactly.
that thing was. Like this super long name of
Yep,
that's
it just
great.
kept going. Like they couldn't stop with the
Yes.
name. J.T. Downs Memorial Gambia Expedition. Very big
That's
words
great.
too. Like, dude, cut it out a bit. What I thought was cool, and I saw the episode. Have you ever watched anything with Josh Gates? Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love Josh Gates. Just
He's great. Yeah,
that
no, he's
out
awesome.
there. One of my favorite people.
Yeah.
On his show Destination Truth, they went out to do research and find if they could see anything. I don't think they got any hardcore evidence like they did on their Bigfoot Yeti episode, but
Right.
I just love the fact that he went out there. There's also, where's this other story? I have another story. Oh yeah, in 2003, a national park ranger in Gambia saw something slide into and under the river at one point. He said it looked like a Chinese dragon. He said he watched it for an hour, going in and out of the water, just kind of doing whatever, I guess, Chinese dragons or African dragons do. They're
Right.
just playing in the water. But after he saw the creature, he got sick. And he got so sick that he actually had to go and get a potion from a witch doctor to make him better.
Nice.
So this actually has something else going on with it. There has been some people saying that when you see the Ninki Nanka, that it kind of has a Medusa effect on you. So instead of you like turning to stone and dying, it actually makes you sick. And there was another report from 1983 of a member of the Papa Linda tribe saw something in the water, and he was just sitting there watching it, and he's like, yeah, this, I don't know what this is. And then 2 weeks after that, sadly, the man died. But it was like a really slow progression. Like it was almost immediately after. And he wasn't able to walk afterwards, and then passed away within 2 weeks after seeing it. There was another story that I came across and man, I know I had a date for this, but I don't. So there was this other story. Oh no, I do. In 1980, a gas station that's near one of the swamps in Gambia all of a sudden exploded. And what the guy at the gas station said was it was the Ninki Nanka. And he had a witness to say that he also saw it. And it came into the gas station, like almost slammed through it, and started almost like biting on some of the pipes in the gas station.
Wow. The
way that these two men got away to tell their story was they grabbed the mirror that was like there at the store and showed it to the Ninki Nanka. So they like showed itself to itself, and it got scared and went away. But the gas station still exploded, and there was like an investigation into this in 1980 where they couldn't find any evidence of this not happening.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
If I'd have been that cop, I would have been like, you guys stole like a pack of Marlboro Reds and lit up out next to the gas pumps. Like,
that's what I was thinking the whole time. I'm like reading this. I was like, dude, it's a gas station. It's in the 80s. Like something's wonky here. But they did an investigation, and they couldn't really say that something didn't destroy the pipes, I guess.
Sure.
So
that's interesting. So I have a question for you too. So going back to like the fact that people get sick. I mean, this is another thing that kind of comes up with a lot of these weird mythic lore type stories, like King Tut, and there was some of that sort of with Mothman, and or like the sense of foreboding and all that. Like, do you have any theories on why that is? Like, is that like a smoke screen? Let's say these things are real. It's like these things are from other dimensions or whatever. Okay. Like, is this a smoke screen to, hide them from the mainstream, or like, do you have any like sort of theories on why there might be these effects on people who experience this phenomena?
I don't have any theories on why. I just found that, in some of the folklore that they're like, you don't want to look right at it because something bad could happen. But what it kind of would remind me of is alien abductions. People would get sick after saying that they were abducted, or they would have like weird dreams where they were on a table and then they have some sort of injury afterwards that related to that dream. That would be probably my only correlation between the two.
It just seems very odd to me that they're like, I think that you find, when you look at these different topics like this, it's interesting to me when you find these things that are like, that are kind of across, are largely across the board similarities, and, especially when you can tie it into, if you can tie it into some sort of scientific proof that, okay, yes, so-and-so got sick after they claimed they saw such and such. And then you can't tie that account to something that happened halfway across the world because it happened independently of this other thing. It's just an interesting thing to me.
I completely agree, man. And it really does just kind of bring up more questions than answers every time.
Sure. Absolutely.
So yeah, that was the Ninki Nanka.
Ninki Nanka.
Again, I couldn't really find like any real like how the Loch Ness Monster, there's photo evidence of it, or there's video evidence, I'll put that in quotes, evidence of it out there. Could not find that. with this one, but there's
Sure.
but as I said in one of our other episodes, a lot of places, especially like Africa and South America, a lot of it is through word of mouth. It's through stories passed down from everyone. And if I had an opportunity to talk to people in this area, I definitely would talk about this.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of the Loch Ness monster, Nessie, the most famous out of most lake and river monsters, of course. Just a little bit about that. I thought it was really cool that there has been 2 different sonar explorations into Loch Ness to see if they find anything. There was one done in 1987. They didn't find anything. There was also done one in 2003. They didn't find anything. But in 2018, we're getting real current here, guys. 2018, somehow there has been some sort of organism or some sort of, I'm going to just say DNA sample. They found something in Loch Ness that got back to some science. I don't know which scientist got this. I have it like in my notes on what website I got it from. But they were able to get a DNA survey done on Loch Ness. And they didn't find any evidence of like a plesiosaur or dinosaur type creature there. But they did find evidence of eels being in Loch Ness. So they've known that there has been eels there, but I think the fact that they couldn't direct it to a specific eel that is in Loch Ness, I thought that was interesting. They found something that they couldn't trace back to a specific eel or a specific fish or a mammal for that matter, you know? So
that is interesting. Yeah. I mean, it could be some sort of unknown species of eel that just grows bigger.
Exactly. There has been like just because of Nessie and Loch Ness, it actually brings Scotland 80 million American dollars annually just for people to go there and see it, which that's freaking great.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah. Another thing just for everyone to keep in mind, that Loch Ness is one of the largest, if not the largest, freshwater lake in Great Britain with a depth of 788 feet. So that's a big place, guys.
Yeah. That's almost 2.5 football fields.
Thank you. Yes.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, everyone can go online and see all the famous photos of Nessie. I do believe that the one famous photo from the 90s was actually proven to be a hoax, sadly. Mm-hmm. But there's plenty of other evidence out there. Going back to they have sightings of Nessie since 200 AD. It's been there for a long freaking time. And one of the first written accounts was from 565 AD from a missionary, seeing it out there.
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And that's another thing too. It's like the consistency with these things, and I don't think a missionary in 560 AD or whatever it was would be like, oh, I'm just going to make up this thing, and
that's how I feel too, especially the fact that he's a missionary and he's going there to pretty much convert everybody over to Christianity. What does Nessie have to do with any of that? Really nothing. Right. Why would he even write it down to say that he saw something? But yeah, he just said that it was this giant humped creature, smooth, long neck with flippers. That's what we hear.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, you gotta mention Nessie if you're gonna talk about lake monsters.
Of course. Yeah. And the other thing too is when you mentioned the one that was the hoax, I mean, certainly, with sort of the proliferation of capitalizing on these different creatures, and someone seeing, with some nefarious purpose, they see, people are making a lot of money on this stuff, or getting a lot of exposure on this stuff, then you're going to have these, sort of charlatans or these, people that are going to try to capitalize on that for their own gain. But there's such a long history of the stories without, without the sort of the capitalist sort of thing tied to it. It was just like lore, or it was experience. And I think that's really interesting that, there's a lot less cynicism in, I think, probably the accounts that we have from like before the internet,
or even like before the turn of the century, because there's some sightings that go back to the late 1800s. Like you said, in the 80s, there was a huge boom in people seeing these creatures, because it wasn't just in Georgia. It happened in Scotland as well with Nessie in the 80s.
Right.
Also happened in Lake Tahoe.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Have you heard of Tessie?
I have not heard of Tessie. Like maybe in passing, but like I didn't pay it any attention.
Yeah. So, I mean, Tessie also goes back to Native American lore. It's been there a long time. The Washoe and Paiute Indians, they believe that the east shores of Cave Rock in Lake Tahoe, it's a very sacred place, and that's where they think that Tessie kind of lives, or that's one of her main places. So, one of the first reported sightings, like from somebody who's not a Native American, was from this guy in 1897. He goes by the name of I.C. Coggin. He was a man from San Francisco. He reported seeing a 600-foot monster serpent in the woods near the lake. Yeah.
Did you say 600 foot?
600 foot.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's like almost as deep as Loch Ness.
I know. That's why I was like 600 foot. That was in 1897 from one person, by the way.
Yeah.
And that was probably the biggest one that I've seen. All the others are like 70 feet at the most. I've never come across anything 600 feet until this one guy said that he saw it. But
that's amazing. I wish he would tell how like the size fish he caught. Remember that story?
Yep.
Fish gets bigger every
Definitely
story.
A fisherman. Definitely. But there were sightings in the 1900s, of course. There were some in 1950. There was 2 off-duty police officers who were out fishing, and they were on the boat, and they saw a large creature swimming under their boat, but it was keeping the speed of their boat. So, and they said it was about 60 feet, which is much different than 600.
Wow.
But yeah, 60 feet, keeping speed with their boat. So that's very fast. Have you heard of I might pronounce this name wrong, but he is famous. Jacques Cousteau?
Yes.
Yeah. He went to Lake Tahoe to go see if he could find Tessie.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, in the 1970s. So, this is freaking wild, man. He took a few mini subs into Lake Tahoe. I'm not sure exactly how deep he was able to get, because I have it written down? Let me see if I have it written down somewhere. Of course I don't. Oh wait, I do. The maximum depth of Lake Tahoe is 1,644 feet. Okay?
Wow.
So just keep that in mind. This is a 600-foot deep lake, guys. And as Jacques Cousteau took a few different trips with mini subs into Lake Tahoe. He didn't report seeing anything, but what he did say was, and this is his quotes, "The world isn't ready for what is down there." I'm like,
wow.
But you're not going to tell us what the fuck you saw, man?
Yeah, and he was like very famous, like whatever oceanographer, I don't know what they're called, but whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He went into the water a lot.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Got my mind going. Like, I was like, what?
Yeah.
What?
That's insane.
Yeah. There was more sightings in the 80s, of course. There was these 2 other policemen, which I just think is funny, but 2 Reno policemen who were there skiing on Lake Tahoe. One was named Chris Beebe. The other, his name was Jerry Jones. They saw a very unusually large creature swimming pretty much right next to them as they're skiing, which I wouldn't know what I would do if I was on skis and saw some creature just swimming next to me. Hurry up and get me to shore, man. Pull me in.
Yeah, no kidding. My God.
There was another sighting in actually July 12th, 1984, and it was actually posted in the San Francisco Chronicle that two women had seen Tessie. A month before that, two other women who were hiking in Lake Tahoe also saw Tessie. So within a 2-month period, the San Francisco Chronicle put out there that these are the sightings. June of 1984, before that article was posted, what the two women who were hiking saw. They were just hiking, and they happened to see something swimming in the lake, below them, and they're looking down like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
They honestly, they thought it was a capsized boat at first, because it was like this weird hump, and it was kind of moving through the water. So they're like, okay, that's strange.
Yeah.
But then they're like, okay, that's like 17 feet long, and it surfaced like a submarine and would go back down under the water. So then they're like, okay, this isn't a capsized boat. And then all of a sudden they saw more than one hump, and it was going in and out of the water pretty much like how I would describe it as almost like a whale or a dolphin is what they were saying, like
Sure.
coming up and out like that in the water. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, creepy. But they sat there and watched it for a while.
That's wicked.
A lot of people think that it is just a giant sturgeon, which I think a lot of these giant lake monsters are usually what they say. It's a giant sturgeon because they are pretty prehistoric looking, so that makes sense.
Sure.
But yeah, a couple things about Lake Tahoe though. There's a lot of stuff that goes on at Lake Tahoe. There has been theories that there's underground river systems that go all the way out to Pyramid Lake, which is also in Nevada, but not really near Lake Tahoe, but kind of. But there's like an underwater like lake system is what they're thinking. They also think that even though there's no eels in Lake Tahoe, that maybe it's some sort of eel that we haven't discovered. So there's a lot of odd things near Lake Tahoe in that area. So the fact that there's a river monster definitely goes along with a lot of their other folklore. So.
How far is Lake Tahoe from like Area 51?
Oh man, I actually looked that up too. I think it's a big distance though. I don't think it's close.
Okay.
Yeah, but I like where your head is at. I like that. I like that. All right, I do have a couple other to talk about, but I'm only going to talk about one, just because I just think it's interesting.
I was long-winded, and we're
both long-winded. But I also wanted to talk about the Agapogo, which is actually in Canada. So part of the Great Lakes, actually, is where this lake monster is known to reside. So in Agapogo, mainly in British Columbia, but it's all kind of connected up there. So,
sure.
The First Nations up there have been seeing this creature since the 19th century. At least it's been reported since the 19th century. And they believe that the Agapogo is actually more of a water spirit, but it's also just one of these giant flipper creatures with a long neck and a giant head. So when European settlers were coming into like the British Columbia area and they were settling and they were hearing these stories and this, they would sometimes see stuff in the water. They thought of it as more of a demon. So then it got a completely different rep after that happened. But this is another 40 to 50 foot long sea serpent, or I guess, some type of serpent in the water, multiple humps, green and black skin, and the head of a horse or a snake. So the thing about this is I found this on one of the articles was that 16% of British Columbians 100% believe this creature exists. Wow. I love that. I was like, that's awesome, actually.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I would like to know how many people believe in Tessie, to be honest. Like how many people in the Lake Tahoe area do believe that this creature is out there. But there has been so many sightings from 1855, 1872. Then there's one from 1914 where this group of First Nations people from West Bank, they came across a carcass that weighed 400 pounds 5 to 6 feet long, blue and gray in color, and had flippers and a tail.
Wow.
That doesn't describe anything in that area that's usually seen in that area.
Sure.
So,
Wow.
I think it's great that they said that they have the carcass of it. There's nothing reported about what they did with the carcass, though. But what my thought is that if this is from the First Nations people, they probably treated it with respect and put it away somewhere. Buried it, put it back in the river, whatever you do. But it does not surprise me that they didn't call like a museum or a scientist or anything like that. That does not surprise me. There has been multiple photos taken of the Agapogo. There's one from 1964 called the Parmenter photo. There's the Fletcher photo from the 70s, the Gall photos from the 70s and 80s. There's plenty of photo evidence of this thing being out there. And it does kind of remind you of Loch Ness, how it is kind of like blurry, you know, the one that's the hoax. Kind of the same thing. You'll see like a hump or something, and then you'll see ripples, or you'll see something with a long neck coming out of the water. I don't know. I thought that one was really interesting too. Monster Quest was there in 2009 looking for it. Nice. So gotta mention that. There was this couple in 2008 who were on the shore of Peachland, and they happened to look out into the water, and they took 11 photos of this creature, and it looks pretty odd. I'm not a professional in any way, but some of these photos I was like, I can't tell if it's doctored. There's no way for me to know, but it was in 2008. People can definitely make their own photos, but I just thought it was cool that there was 11 different photos.
Right. That's very cool.
There was also, I don't have a date for this for some odd reason, but in British Columbia, there are a couple of scientists who somehow got a tissue sample of something from that river in British Columbia, in that lake. A local man named Dan found some creature near Lakeshore Road while he was kayaking. Supposedly some sort of carcass, and he's the one who was able to give them a DNA sample, and he has the creature in his freezer. So,
oh my God.
But I can't find anything about the DNA sample, about that article that I was reading. I didn't want to give up too many names because it's all still being examined, investigated, looked at. So.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
That's the Agapogo in Canada, guys.
That's wild. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'll have to go look up these. How do you spell that?
Agapogo. Let me get back to that. It is OGOPOGO.
Okay. So
it also has a different name though from the First Nations people. I might mispronounce this, but it's a Naitaka, Naitaka, and that goes back to being a sea or some type of water spirit. So. But yeah, there's all kinds of others. Ones that I really didn't talk about was the one in Ohio. Yeah, I know, called Bessie. For Lake.
Of course.
Yeah, for South Bay Bessie, it's in Lake Erie. So if anybody's out near Lake Erie, you guys got one too.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and there was a lot of sightings on it as well. But yeah, there's just I really like the whole sea monster, lake monster, river monster thing, just because, as you said earlier, there's so much out there that we don't know about waters in general. And sometimes we can't even go to certain depths and feet to even look and do research and discover new things. Who's to say there isn't something out there in these giant lakes alone? Why not?
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm with you. It's so interesting. I think those are awesome. Thank you for sharing those. That's great.
Of course, man. This has been a great long episode. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We're gonna kind of wrap things up here. Everybody, please go to our Instagram, which is at Weird Mythic Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Weird Mythic Podcast, and please go hang out with Serena. Serena, we missed you this episode. Go to Twitter, and that's just at Weird Mythic. if anybody has any of their own sightings, especially about these, creatures in the water, please send us an email at weirdmythicpodcast@gmail.com. Go to any platform that you get your podcast fix and give us a like, a download, comment. Don't care which, just something. Let us know you're listening, and I appreciate it a lot, guys.
Yeah, no. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me back. It was a lot of fun. I think it was a great episode to be a part of. And so Santa May Be a Criminal, wherever you listen, at Santa Maybe on most socials, at Santa Maybe Pod, at Santa Maybe Podcast on some of the others. But definitely like, follow, subscribe, do 5-star ratings, all those things to help us get big. And I just really appreciate you guys letting me come on, and we miss Serena, but hopefully I'll get to come back again, and
Definitely.
we can do the trio again. And I really appreciate you, and I love the show, and I'm excited to have you both on one of these iterations of Santa. Maybe I'm gonna get something. I don't know which piece it's gonna be yet, but I'm gonna get with you both, and it's gonna be fun.
Hit us up. I think that would be great. I love Santa Maybe. Everyone definitely should listen to that. He just finished the first season, and we are both, all three of us are gonna be at the True Crime Podcast Festival in Dallas at the end of August. So please come by and say hi to us all.
Absolutely.
All right. You have a good one.